The camera's like swapping over the tape, so we have to wait a second. Alright. Veteran's name, Clarence Dean Allen. Date of birth, June 3rd, 1919. War served in branch of service, Army Air Corps, World War II. Highest rank, Tech Sergeant, Sergeant Major. Tech date and state, April 19th, Alabama. He is a friend of a friend, and this interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Okay. For the first question, where and when were you born?
June 3rd, 1919, born in Birmingham, Alabama.
Will you tell us about your family, parents, and any siblings?
My dad was a railroad man, and my mother was a stay-at-home mother. I had two brothers. Two brothers. There's three boys in the family, and all three of us were in the service at one time. My oldest brother was in the Army MP. He was in India, and then back to Guam. My youngest brother was in the Navy, and he was on a PT boat down in the Philippines.
What were you doing before you entered into service?
I was working for Dun and Bradstreet. I was on a route throughout Birmingham carrying reports that they had ordered.
Okay. Now, how did you enter into service?
Why?
Yes, sir.
Well, the war was coming on. I knew there was a draft coming up, and I did not want to be drafted because the draft people went into the infantry, and I did not want to go into the infantry, so there was a squadron in Birmingham that I knew about and knew several guys that was in that squadron, so I just went out and joined that squadron so I'd be in the Air Corps.
All right. Why did you choose the Air Corps?
Well, I have just always been interested in flying. First airplane I ever rode in was a Ford Trimotor. I doubt that you ever remember the Ford Trimotor. But it was an old corrugated aluminum plane. And my daddy carried me out to an airport, and we took a ride around Birmingham in the Ford Trimotor. I've just always been interested in aviation.
Yes, sir. Do you remember leaving for basic training?
Do what?
Do you remember leaving for basic training?
I didn't understand you.
Do you remember what basic training was like?
Oh, basic training, yeah. Well, I've got several things that when we went into basic training. First of all, this squadron that I was in was a very portable squadron. We moved everywhere. We moved all over the United States. Every few weeks, or never over a 3-month period was we in any one spot. So when I went in there, we were sent to Miami, Florida. That's one of our first training places. And there's 3 things that happened down there in Miami while I was there. I don't know whether you've ever heard of it or not, but the Bermuda Triangle out in the Atlantic. We were flying over the Atlantic Ocean out of Miami, looking at German submarines that was sinking ships on the Florida coast. We always flew 2 planes at a time. They'd fly about 3 hours and turn around and come in and land. Another 2 planes would take off and go. One day, 2 of them went into a cloud. One of them never returned. He just turned up missing. Most massive search I've ever heard of that took place looking for that plane. Never a life raft, nothing ever showed up from that airplane. It just vanished. But that was out over the Bermuda Triangle, so we assumed that it went down into the Bermuda Triangle. Another thing, one day we was stationed in Fort Myers, Florida. Had an air-to-ground target set up on an island out of Fort Myers, and they had a crash boat circling the island while we were diving, getting our gunnery practice, shooting at those ground targets. And we had a hot pilot. We had just got some new pilots in from flying school. When I was next race car driver, he was flying one of the planes, the plane that was circling. When we got through shooting the targets, he decided he was going to buzz the little crash boat that was circling the island. He got there real low. When he found the boat, a wind current hit him and turned him up on his side, and his wingtip cut the boat in half. The guys in the boat got in the back half and brought the boat in with the front end sticking out of the water with no front end to it. The plane crashed and everybody in the airplane got killed except the pilot. He brought him on in, and then he was court-martialed, given a dishonorable discharge, and I don't know what happened to him after that. But then there was another time we found a submarine out of Miami. I was stationed in Miami on this incident. Found a German sub out there. We were not allowed to bomb him because the War Department said we might be bombing an American sub. So they said, just tell the Coast Guard about it so they can go out and try to capture him if they were close by. So they were. They got the German sub and brought him into Miami. Put the guys on the sub in the prisoner of war camp. And then searching the sub, they found that the kitchen in that submarine was full of American food bought in a Miami grocery store. That's some of the oddities of war that I went through in my early training days. And I guess that's about enough of that. What else you got?
Did you specialize in any training?
Well, I can tell you here what I did. That's what you want to know?
Yes,
what
sir.
I did when I was in war. When I was reading here from my discharge, I supervised and directed all administrative work and practices in a headquarters organization of a bomb squadron in the 13th Air Force. Directed the preparation of correspondence, records, forms, reports, and orders. Established with the squadron adjutant all administrative policies and local directives from a bomb squadron. Has seen service in Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands, New Guinea, Mauritania, the Philippines, Bismarck Archipelago, Southern Philippines, Luzon, and the Northern Pacific.
All right. How was it adapting to military life? The physical regimen, the barracks, food, social life?
Well, I was over here in basic training for 3 years. We were moving all the time. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed my time in the military, except for the killing part. I didn't like that, but just being in the military was no really adjustment to make. I really enjoyed it because it was a good squadron, and we had we just always on the move, so there was no problem there adjusting to it at all. And I just told you about one of the things I did, but I also flew a lot as an auxiliary extra gunner on the planes. And I've been through a lot of targets and overseas, things of that nature, so there was no adjustment to it.
Okay, where did you serve?
Where did I what?
Where did you serve?
Served.
Yes, sir.
I just told you there that it was all down in the South Pacific, all those places that I named a while ago.
Could you tell us about the trip?
Hmm?
Could you tell us a few details about the trip?
About the ship?
The trip.
Trip over. Oh, it was going from, we were stationed in Savannah, Georgia. Took a train to the West Coast, shipped out of San Francisco. And we got on board ship, cruised around in the San Francisco Bay all day before we pulled out under the Golden Gate Bridge. They took up our summer uniform, gave us heavy winter clothes, so we felt like we were going to Alaska, to the Aleutians. When we got out in the sea, they took our winter clothes back up and gave us summer clothes again. and we headed to the South Pacific. It took us 22 days to cross the Pacific by changing course every 7 minutes. They said it would take 8 minutes for a submarine to line up to shoot a torpedo at us, so they changed their course every 7 minutes crossing the Pacific. That's the reason it took 22 days to cross the Pacific. And then we landed at Espiritu Santos down in the South Pacific. And from there we went up to Guadalcanal. That's where I started, at Guadalcanal.
All right. Did you witness any action?
Just flying over it, some of it. Yeah, we was bombed a lot. They almost bombed us out of a couple of places in New Guinea because we didn't have much support from the anti-aircraft. And we didn't get no action like the infantry does.
What do you remember about being bombed?
About being bombed?
What was that like?
Well, we never took a whole island in the whole Pacific. The infantry would go in, make a landing, to push the Japanese back to a certain perimeter, and then with the guards, we set up a guard post out there to hold them back so far away from us. And they would come in and bomb us at night. They never bombed us in the daytime. It's always at night that they bombed us. That's about the gist of it.
Do you see any casualties or the direct results of your bombing?
I didn't see any of the casualties that we caused because I was always in the airplane. But I saw a lot of casualties of other squadrons. Their plane would get shot up and they would come in for a landing at our base. A lot of them crashed and burned, and a lot of the casualties from that point of view. And it was pretty nasty to see all that dead guys and burning.
Change the subject. Will you tell us about some of the people you met and friendships that you made?
Well, yeah, everybody was just like brothers out there. We all stood together. None of them particularly. I just had some close friends that I met then. That I still, well, not many of us left. All of us are dead now, except me and one other guy that was in my squadron. And beyond that, I can just close friends.
Will you tell us about your friends, like details of them, what you remember?
Well, my squadron was involved in, after the war was over, we came back here, was involved in the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba. Cubans were trying to overthrow Castro, and I had two good friends that was involved in the Bay of Pigs invasion, and all of them are dead now except one. And I've seen him a couple of times, had lunch with him. He started out in my squadron as a airplane mechanic, enlisted man airplane mechanic. And he went, as the war went on, they needed more pilots, so they changed the program. First you had to be a college graduate to get into flying school. Then they switched it later on to you could be an enlisted man's flying school, take a college equivalent examination, and he started out as a fighter pilot and then as an enlisted man. He shipped down to North Africa in a fighter pilot squadron. So I never saw him anymore after that. He was off in the fighter squadron in Africa until after the war. To come back here, I found out he was in that Bay of Pigs invasion. But that was all after the war. I just had some close friends that I developed while I was in the service, and most of them are dead now.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home while you were in the Pacific?
Well, our letters were censored, and most of my letters would tell me were cut up to shreds because they cut so much of the letter out. But I would always start my letters with what I told my mother and daddy. If I started a letter talking about the weather, there's something else in the letter trying to tell you where I am. But that let them know to look for it. I tried to not make it so bold that the censors could figure out what I was trying to do, but I was able to let them know a little bit about where I was during the war.
All right. What would you do for recreation or while off duty?
Sightsee. We did a lot of sightseeing, little road trips. I went to Washington, New York, and several different big cities around. And while I was in the Air Corps, in my military flying and civilian flying after the war was over, I have landed and taken off in over 100 cities in the United States. So we went to Washington and New York, several places while I was in, just sightseeing.
What did you do for recreation while in the Pacific?
Oh, we had not much, just staying alive.
Okay. Where were you when the war ended?
Where was I when the war ended? I was in the Philippines. I was where was I when the war ended? I was in Palawan Island in the Philippines. That's a long cigar-shaped island out in the Pacific Ocean between the Philippines and China. And then when I was assigned to, when the war ended, we had already received our orders to go to up to one of the islands up near Japan to stage for the invasion of Japan. So we would have been one of the first squadrons to go into Japan. But when by that time they dropped the big bomb, so that canceled that trip out. And from then on, what are we talking about?
Where you were when the war ended?
Oh, where was I when the war ended? Yeah, out in the Philippine Islands, and I was assigned the duty of flying to Manila to turn the airplane in. We turned our airplanes in at Manila, at Clark Field, just north of Manila. So we had bad weather flying up there then. There was a tropical warm front across the Philippines, and we'd go into that thing, and it just tear the plane up trying to go through it. So we turned around and went back. We tried that trip about 3 times, and finally we just got through, but it was a real rough flight. So from there, then we caught a bus from Clark Field back to Manila, and there I rejoined the squadron, and from there we were sent on a troop train from there to Georgia, where I was discharged. And one of the interesting things about my squadron, it was activated as a 106th observation squadron in Canfield, Texas, in 1917. It was sent to Germany to fight in World War I, as a 800th repair squadron. That was just a bunch of mechanics that worked on the Spads and the Hadleys and such as that, those old crate airplanes. So they did a good job over there. And then it was returned back to the United States. And in 1999, it was demobilized. And then the squadron was reactivated in 1940. And after that's where I joined it, and we went from there on to the Pacific. But we moved around all over the country before we. Another interesting thing about one of the, you've heard of Tokyo Rose, I guess. Hanoi Jane and Tokyo Rose and those propaganda radio people. Well, Tokyo Rose came on one day and told us about a large Air Force would come over and bombed a large force of airplanes attacked Port-au-Princesa airstrip on Palawan Island, south of Mindoro. 200 B-29s, B-25s, and B-24s were destroyed on the ground, and at least 30 P-38s were set afire. The entire strip was left in flames. That was what she said. One airplane came over and dropped a bomb or two, did very little damage, so nothing Tokyo Rose ever broadcast was the truth. It was all a stretched out thing. And let's see, then, all right, what else you want to know now?
How was the reception by your friends and family when you returned?
That's a bad thought in my mind. When I left to go into the Army, I was in there nearly 6 years. I was going on 6 years. And by then, the last 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, I never went home because I was overseas all the time. So my family just grew away from me. As if they didn't even exist. So when we were coming back from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, after I'd been discharged, a lot of the boys in the squadron came back. We all came back on the same train. And their parents all gathered together to come down to the terminal station to meet us. And when my parents was in that crowd, well, before we got there, I decided to go to Mississippi to meet a friend of mine's girlfriend before going home. So when the train arrived in Birmingham, I wasn't there for my parents to greet us back home, which was a very sour note in my life. I regretted that immensely, that I wasn't there to meet them when the train came in. But that was just a way of life there. And another thing I wanted to show you here was
Keep talking, I'll be right back.
a picture of an airplane. Every airplane over there in the Pacific, I don't know how they were on the other places, but in the Pacific, every airplane had a picture of a nearly nude girl on it. Here's one of our planes. Yeah, that's similar to the other pictures. But every airplane had a name and a picture of a naked girl on it. And one other thing I wanted to mention was the fact that I didn't have to go overseas. I didn't have to do it all. Because before you would go, any outfit would go overseas, you went through a palm inspection, preparation for overseas movement. And they came in my squadron, and I was assigned the job of taking the inspection crew around to every division in our air squadron. After they left and inspected us and gave us a right to go on overseas, my commanding officer received a letter from the commander of the group that inspected us. And in his letter he said, one of the most outstanding men I met on my trip was your Sergeant Allen, who is your Sergeant Major, I believe. I would like very much to get him, because I believe he is the man I'm looking for as one of my assessors. And he went on to tell me how much promotions he could give me and all this, that, and the other. I told my commanding officer, let me have the letter. I've got the letter here in my file. I told him I was wanted to go overseas. I didn't want no stay-at-home deal. So I took off and went overseas. And let's see.
Sorry.
Is it getting close?
Yes, sir. 6 more minutes. Have you talked with any fellow veterans over the years?
They're all dead now, except me and one other guy. So all the people that I knew back when I was in the service are all gone. But yes, I've seen a couple of them 2 or 3 times, several times. Had lunch with them and such, but there's not many of us left to talk to.
Are you a member of any veteran organizations?
No.
All right. How has your wartime experiences affected your life?
I guess the main thing that my wartime experience has taught me was that if something you want to do, go after it. If you don't go after it, you'll never get it. If you do go after it with all of the strength you have, you can get someplace in the world.
Are there any remarkable stories that you want to share with us? Anything in general?
Well, one time in Guadalcanal, where we had set up the perimeter guards out, where they took the island but set up a perimeter guard to hold the Japs back. I was sergeant of the guard, so I had to go up to the guard post to see that everything was all right. And coming back, I saw a boot out in the path, the jungle path where I was walking, and I kicked that boot. And it kicked pretty heavy, so I picked it up and looked at it, and the foot was still in it. So we had several stories like that. 3 or 4 more minutes.
4 more minutes, yes,
4
sir.
minutes, okay. Well, here's a group of
Yeah. Hey, and what's this? Is that a collection of all the medals you've...
do what?
Is that like all the medals you've gotten?
Yeah, I don't understand you.
Are those the medals you've...
Oh yeah, these are my medals up in here. That's the Asiatic Pacific one. That's my main. This is the original Air Corps signal. Then I changed it to this one, and then from that one I changed to this one. That's the Air Force you was in. So that's my squadron insignia. And these are that's American, that's the Asiatic Pacific Theater with all the battle stars there. The American Theater was, this one right here. We got that battle star for serving, for looking for German submarines out over the Atlantic. And that's at China, Burma, India. We bombed the oil fields out in Balikpapan in Borneo. We got the battle star for that. And then these good conducts and various other things where when anything happened or you got an award, everybody in the squadron got it. Not just one person, because I was no hero. I just a general soldier, did what I was supposed to do. And let's see, what else do I want to tell you? Oh, that's about it. That's about as much as I know. I can tell you right now.
What about the newspaper article that you showed me earlier?
Well, I don't want that to get in there at all.
All right.
I was not a member of the Bay of Pigs, and I don't want to get that involved at all, because I was out of the squadron. That took place after the war was over, and I was out of the squadron.
Are there any pictures you want to share with us?
The pictures, yep.
Will you tell us about, are these the planes you flew, or flew on?
That was our first airplanes. Let's see, that guy there was on the German Tokyo raid. He was killed after we got over. And then let's see, we had some P-38s, and that's the ship I went over on. B-25s. They made 10,000 B-25s during the war. That's a lot of airplanes. That's a bomb crater. That's some of my friends. There's another one of our airplanes. I've got a lot of pictures in here. Here's another one.
All right. Now, is there any final words you want to say for the interview?
Anyway.
Final words?
No, other than I just enjoyed my military service. I really did. I did not enjoy the killing part, but I enjoyed every minute of it.
All right. Thank
Had
you very
some
much.
great experiences.